I think one of the most dangerous things a person can become is highly functional while deeply exhausted. Because from the outside, everything can still look fine. You still show up, still work, still perform, still smile, still answer messages, still get things done. But internally, the system is running on fumes. And honestly, I think a huge amount of people are living there now, especially people carrying pressure quietly. The high performers, the providers, the entrepreneurs, the people trying to hold everything together. A lot of them aren't collapsing dramatically. They're overriding themselves strategically. And there's a difference, because overriding is subtle. It's, I'll rest later. I'll deal with it later. One more push, one more week, one more cycle. Sometimes that works temporarily. Human beings are actually incredibly adaptive. Guys say this all the time in practice. And that's the fascinating part. The nervous system can compensate for quite a long time, but compensation is not the same thing as regulation. That's important, because eventually the body starts charging interest on chronic override. And that interest can appear as fatigue, irritability, brain fog, emotional numbness, anxiety, sleep disruption, lack of motivation, disconnection, or simply feeling permanently off. And weirdly, many people don't even realise how dysregulated they've become, because the state has become so normal. And that's the scary bit. The body adapts to survival mode. You stop asking, is this healthy? And start asking, how much longer can I maintain this? And that's a very different mindset. And honestly, modern culture rewards override massively. Push harder, sleep less, hustle more. Always available, always productive, always switched on. But nervous systems aren't machines. And eventually, something starts pushing back internally. Sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly. This is one reason I find markets psychology fascinating. Get my teeth back in. Because trading exposes override behaviour constantly. You'll see people forcing trades, forcing certainty, forcing entries, forcing recovery after losses. Not because they're stupid, because their nervous system cannot tolerate the discomfort of uncertainty. So they override intuition, override fatigue, override emotional warning signals. And then eventually the reaction gets expensive, financially, emotionally, psychologically. The fascinating thing, though, is the exact same pattern exists outside markets too. Relationships. People overriding boundaries, exhaustion, intuition, emotional pain. Stress signals, just pushing through permanently. And for a while, that can actually look like strength externally. And that's a trap. Because society often mistakes suppression for resilience. But suppression and regulation are not the same thing. A regulated person can feel emotion without drowning in it. a suppressed person disconnects from it entirely. And eventually the body starts trying to reconnect the person to themselves again. That's where burnout often enters. Not because the person is weak, but because the system has exceeded sustainable load for too long. And honestly, I understand this far more now than I used to. There were definitely periods in my life where I wore override almost like an identity. Keep moving, keep producing, keep carrying pressure, ignore fatigue, ignore emotion, ignore stress. Blimey. And for a while you can survive like that. But survival mode changes perception. Life starts feeling heavier. Smaller things feel harder. Joy decreases. Recovery decreases. Presence decreases. And eventually you stop feeling connected to yourself properly. That's a strange feeling. Especially when externally everything still appears functional. I honestly think some people are not depressed. They're chronically dysregulated and exhausted. And there's a difference. Because exhaustion distorts reality. The nervous system starts interpreting everything through fatigue. Small problems feel enormous. Simple decisions feel overwhelming. Future thinking becomes darker. That's why recovery matters so much. Not laziness. Recovery. Because performance without recovery eventually becomes self-destruction. Elite athletes understand this. Operators understand this. Markets understand this too. Even charts move in cycles. Expansion, compression, recovery, continuation. Human beings aren't that different. And honestly, one of the biggest upgrades I've made over the last few years is learning not to glorify permanent intensity anymore. Because calm consistency beats emotional override long term. Every time. And the strange thing is, once people finally stop overriding themselves constantly, clarity often returns naturally. Energy returns, emotion returns, creativity returns, and presence returns. Not instantly, but gradually, right? Because the system finally feels safe enough to stop operating permanently in defense mode. And maybe that's the real message here. A lot of people aren't broken. They're exhausted from carrying pressure while pretending they're fine. And eventually, overriding yourself always has a cost. This is The Signal, and this is episode 4.